All right, it's showtime. Dave, welcome. How are you?
I am doing very well. Welcome to you as well, CR.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Dave. I'm glad you're here to talk about another round of retirement questions and answer all those for everyone joining us live.
Yes, can't wait. It's hard to believe that it's been a week since we answered the last group of questions.
And if you notice, I've grown up a little bit. I'm starting to grow my beard out here for a special Halloween celebration.
Yeah, who are you going to be this year for Halloween?
Well, I'm going to try to be the Tiger King, and so I'm going to try to grow it out. This is the longest it's ever been, and I'm just giving it a shot.
I think you're going to do a pretty good imitation of that by the time you're done. Now, what are you going to use for your tiger?
Well, I'm actually going to use my sheep. So if you listen to us on the podcast, I have a sheep. I'm going to spray paint him with some obviously washable paint, and we're going to turn him into the tiger.
Oh, I can't wait to see those pictures. That's going to be fun to see.
Yeah. And do you have a Halloween costume for you picked out yet, Dave?
No, I don't. We joked about it because last year on Halloween, I was in the hospital getting my kidney transplant. So we joked that every Halloween going forward, we would just use a mask and gown. Now, not knowing that masks would become so popular that we would just pretend we were patients in the hospital. But I've not picked it out yet. Not sure if I'm going to even pick one out at this point. We don't have really any Halloween activities planned for our family. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for most places, Halloween's been canceled. So I just make sure I had plenty of candy for myself so I could at least sit there and enjoy that dressed as the Tiger King.
Yeah, I did see here locally that Lowe's is doing a drive-by trick or treat that I think this week, this Thursday, they're going to allow you to drive by for an hour in your car. They'll hand you some goodies and move on.
Yeah, drive-by trick-or-treating. That sounds like a new cool thing.
Yeah, we always thought it was bad when you had to walk. Now it's just you drive through the neighborhood, people just pass stuff in your window, getting way too easy.
Yeah, well, I like it. Well, Dave, since we're here, let's get on and start asking some questions to you. So I have a series of questions. If you're watching us live or here for the first time, I have a series of questions that I ask Dave about retirement that I pick out and send to him. And we always encourage those who are watching live to come on and submit your questions about retirement. And if we get a chance, we'll read those as well. And we basically just sit here and pick on Dave and make sure that he can answer all of our retirement questions. So Dave, are you ready?
I am. Let's get going.
Okay. And again, if you're with us live, please go ahead and tell us where you're watching from, and also submit your retirement questions. And we'll go ahead and get started with our first one. This is from Norman. Norman asks, does the government pension offset apply to just federal pensions, or does it include state pensions?
Norman, the question Norman's asking here is in regards to Social Security. So just so you're aware from the background for you that are watching this, if you're not familiar with what the government pension offset is, what it is it is a part of the Social Security program that if you are getting spousal benefits from a spouse and you've got a pension plan, they're going to reduce your benefits for Social Security that you would be entitled to from that spouse, depending upon how much your pension is. So the question is saying, okay, if you've got a federal pension where they've not paid into Social Security, obviously that's going to be reduced, but may a state pension have the same effect? And it depends upon what's happened with that state pension. Some state pensions are going to pay into Social Security and allow you to get those benefits, so it's not going to apply for an offset. Some are going to be set up to where you will not have paid anything into Social Security. And if that's the case, then the government pension offset is going to apply, and you're going to have those benefits reduced. So you'd have to look at on a state-by-state basis. If you're still employed, the best way to figure it out is look at your W-2 form. If on there's any withholding for Social Security, then government pension offset's not going to apply. But if it's blank, like many states' pension plans are set up, then you're going to have the government pension offset apply to those Social Security benefits once you get into your retirement years.
And Dave, I know we're talking specifically Social Security on this, but tell us the difference between a 401k and a pension plan, because I know they're both employee-sponsored retirement plans, but I know there's a difference between those two also.
A great question, CR. And when we're talking about pensions, we're talking about an environment where you're getting a set amount of money throughout the rest of your retirement. If we look back at our grandparents, maybe even some of our parents, they were much more popular. A lot of the big corporations had these plans. Governments have had them for decades now. But as we look into our lifetime now, what we're looking at, there's only about 13% of the population that's getting a monthly payment from any other type of organization besides Social Security, or that they haven't set up through an annuity. 401k is a lump sum of money that you've put in, and then it's up to you to determine how you take it out. So there's a lot more risk when you're looking at a 401k, because you've got to look at what the market's going to do. You've also got to take into consideration how much money you can take out of that account. Whereas with a pension plan, that's done by someone else. Now, that doesn't mean that the pension's secure. We have many situations out there. I know we just moved from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican pension plans are in trouble. They're going broke, and the guys managing those plans didn't do it correctly, or they weren't funded correctly. So it doesn't mean that those are still going to be guaranteed. But for most people, if you're doing it yourself, you're going to have a little more risk than you would with a big company or a government doing that administration.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, those who do have a pension, they're pretty lucky if everything works out. So yeah, thanks for answering that.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, if it is your main source of retirement, and you see it, unfortunately, when those pensions go bankrupt, we've got large corporations that have gone bankrupt. Again, we've got a few areas like Puerto Rico where they're in trouble. In fact, anytime they talk about financial stimulus in Puerto Rico, biggest thing they're trying to protect is those pension funds that there's not enough money for. Yeah, and It's an issue that they've got to look into, because if all of a sudden the majority of your retirement income's gone overnight, retirement's going to look a lot different than you expected it to. And especially if you didn't have Social Security because you'd put all your money into that government pension. So yeah, big issues, big things that people need to look at. And just one last thing, CR, I think it just warrants why we should get multiple streams of income in retirement, so we don't have these issues of having one stream go away and now we're stuck.
I think you're reading my notes, because I have that on here for both of these. So way to go.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yes, that's one of the things we've definitely got to look at, those multiple streams of income. And we talk about as multiple streams of tax-free income, but just as you're diversifying your assets during your working years, very important to diversify your income during retirement so that you can get to a more safe and secure retirement.
Exactly. All right, Dave. So the next one we have is from Heidi. And she said, what is the difference between a reverse mortgage and a forward-facing mortgage?
Yeah, Heidi, this came out of our webinar when we talked about the reverse mortgages. For those that don't know, this is a new webinar that we've launched. We don't sell reverse mortgage products. It's just an opportunity for us to educate people on what a reverse mortgage is so they can better understand how they work and how they may benefit your retirement plan. I think it's one of the items that are out there that is least understood, especially by retirees. And so our goal is to help educate people so they can better understand what it is. But so your reverse mortgage is a situation where you're taking equity out of your home, getting the money, and then the interest is accruing up until the point that you either sell the home, you pass away, to where that home can be paid off. Forward-facing mortgage is your traditional mortgage that you would get primarily for most people during their working years, where you're going out and borrowing $200,000 or $300,000 so you can buy a home. You've then got a monthly payment that includes the interest that's being accrued on a monthly basis. You've got a monthly payment. And so the equity on a forward-facing mortgage is generally getting smaller, where the equity on or getting larger. I mean, the debt's getting smaller, the equity is getting larger. On a reverse mortgage, what you've got is just the opposite. The equity, it's getting smaller, and the debt's continuing to grow because you're not having to pay those interest payments.
So with the forward-facing mortgage, they have to obviously make a down payment, I'm assuming, right? Because it's like a traditional loan, so a 10 or 20% of whatever the value of the home is?
Yes. So yeah, most traditional forward-facing loans, you are going to have some out-of-pocket costs. Now, depending on if you're a veteran, maybe you wouldn't have to have out-of-pocket costs for programs that the government set up. But you're right. Most people are going to want to put something down, and you do see many of them go past 20% so they can get rid of the mortgage insurance that's going to be required if you don't.
And we look at this because, again, with the forward-facing, we're talking you probably have to have a good credit score if you want a good interest rate. You probably need to have your pay stub, so that means you're currently working and you're getting income. Versus with the reverse mortgage, you have to be over age 62, right? So there's a big difference we're looking at between these two.
Yeah, there really is, and they're really to do two different things. When you're looking at a forward-facing mortgage, it's costing you every month. You're having to put out of pocket. Yes, you got a lump sum of money, but you've got to make that payment or you're going to end up losing the home. Reverse mortgage, if done correctly, and again, it's all based upon individual facts and circumstances. I believe that reverse mortgages can work very well for some people. I believe they're an absolute disaster for other people. But when you look at it, a reverse mortgage is giving you cash flow during retirement. So instead of paying out money, you can set it up to where you're getting money. So if you haven't saved appropriately, or maybe all of your money went into a house, let's say that you put, and I see it with people in California, they may have put $1 million into a house, or that's what the house is worth now. And they've got Social Security, but they've got this big liability with this house, especially from their tax side. They may want to take a reverse mortgage out from there to be able to help them cover some of the costs. And again, if they don't have anyone to give the equity to at the end anyway, it allows them to just use the equity during their lifetime. At the end, mortgage is paid off, and there's not really much left for beneficiaries. But again, based on everyone's situation.
Yeah. And tell me one more thing about the reverse mortgage. We also talk about some type of counseling session. Tell me about that, because we've talked about that many times also.
Yeah, you get a lot of people out there that say they're just trying to steal your home. Maybe you've seen the recent ads from Tom Selleck. He's promoting reverse mortgage right now, and obviously he's a paid advertiser. So anytime someone's getting paid, you've got to be a little skeptical. What we found with most of what he teaches and says on his infomercial is that most of it's accurate. Some of it's misleading as we look at what's going on there. But yes, you do have a counseling session you have to go to. Now, I think counseling maybe is an overstretch, of what the term is, because they're not going to be there to guide you like we would as advisors, to be able to say, hey, this is what you should do. And maybe, this is what I would do if I were in your situation. What they're really doing is educating you, which is an important aspect, telling you what the way it works. That one of the programs is driven by the government. It's home equity conversion mortgage. It's the most popular reverse mortgage, but they're there to really help guide and direct you so that you can make the right decision yourself. They're not going to tell you what your decision is, but they'll try to answer your questions and help you better understand the program so you don't make a mistake. I mean, this is a big issue. You're talking about your home. You're talking about one of the safest things you have in your retirement. And if you do it wrong, you'd hate to be in a situation where you ended up losing that home and losing the equity and then being stuck trying to figure out what you're going to do from there.
Exactly. And if you'd like to learn more about reverse mortgages, Dave has a webinar over at CPA Academy. So if you go to his website at theprosperityguy.com, you can go to the events tab and you can look up all of the webinars that are in there. You have 9 in total. And then you also have the reverse mortgage. So jump on there and you can find out more details. And at the end, again, we'll show you the slide again that talks about all the upcoming webinars. But I really encourage you, if you're looking into this, like Dave said, I mean, there's so many great tips in there also, Dave, you talk about making sure you have somebody there to help make those decisions so you're not going to get caught into a scheme. Don't rush into it. A lot of great advice. So I encourage you to jump on and take part of that.
Yeah, and I've scheduled them out now through the end of the year. So the platform that we use, CPA Academy, may not quite have them all up yet, but I have gone through and scheduled those out throughout the end of the year. So if you're looking for something to do through the holidays, you want to spend time with me on a webinar, please go ahead and sign up for these webinars, get yourself educated. Pretty relaxing, pretty enjoyable. We try to make it enjoyable for you, a good experience. But you're definitely welcome to spend your time during the holidays with me if you'd like to.
So does that mean I got to come and have Thanksgiving dinner at a webinar with you?
Yes, you can, but you're going to have to do that in northern Utah. I'm not going to be here in Tennessee, but you're welcome to come to Thanksgiving dinner with us, and we'll just shoot off a webinar for an hour while you're there.
Perfect. Don't tempt me. That sounds too exciting. All right, Dave, the next question I have is from William. William says, is there a critic's review of what you teach?
Yeah, William, I thought this was a great question, because this is one of the things when we talk about any topic that we really want to have other people analyze what we're talking about. And I've now taught somewhere around, I think, 87 webinars. I think we're figuring it out that we're coming upon our 100th webinar here over the next about 3 weeks, I think. We're somewhere middle of November. We're going to hit our 100th webinar. We're actually going to do some fun things surrounding it. But during that time, we've had a ton of critic reviews, because we have financial planners. We've got people that are extremely advanced in tax and retirement planning on our webinars. And when we come back, what we find is that all in all, people are very happy with the things we're teaching. Now, the biggest complaint we do get is from people who don't sell insurance or annuity products, which are some of the tools we talk about. that they usually have issues regarding the products. But what we're finding is that when we have longevity risk, we've got tax rate risk, there's nobody that can solve these problems better than insurance companies can. So whether you want to use them in your retirement, that's entirely up to you. But you do need to consider them, in my opinion, if you're trying to get to a tax-free and risk-free retirement.
And Dave, I would encourage those who are watching even live or on the replay to go watch the podcast or listen to the podcast, because I go on there and I ask Dave some pretty hard questions and sometimes some statements that come on. So yeah, we do get some great and bad reviews, but there's a lot of information and there's lots of testimonials on the website as well. But I appreciate that, because this is not all just one-sided greatness. I mean, this is really a challenge no matter what you do. And you're talking about people's livelihood. And I know how passionate you are and how much you love helping people. And so that's the main reason why we're here. We're not here because it's putting money in your pocket, especially like reverse mortgages. You're just educating on that. There's nothing you're tied to. And so it's really important that people know that.
Well, and what's interesting to see is we'll see some of the top financial advisors address the topics we teach. Ken Fisher, Fisher Investments. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a billionaire that's made money off of investing platforms and helping other people invest their money. He's been very critical of the tax-free environment that we've talked about for decades, through David McKnight. And he's written about that and he's criticized. Well, quite interesting. About a month ago, he posted a post saying, if Biden gets in, I'm going to go and convert all my money into the tax-free environment. And it's like, wait a second, you've promoted for years that this is not what people should be doing. And you've belittled what we're doing. And now you're coming back and saying, wait, I'm going to do the exact same thing you told me that what I should have done, but I didn't want to listen to. So we've just got to look at the time. And I think that's one of the things. We're ahead of the curve. We're looking out into the future. We're not just looking at today, that all the things we're talking about are saying, look, based upon what we're seeing in the government, based upon what's longevity, how long we're living, that we're trying to solve those issues. And they're not in common methods that many advisors have been used to using.
So you're telling me that tax rates could go up even sooner if Biden gets elected?
Yes, they could. And I'm not trying to get into any politics here. We're just trying to state facts of what's been said through the political system. And I think it's something you need to understand, that they talk about just raising taxes on the rich, but there's been a number of articles come out. And it's been my belief, having studied this stuff for years, is that there's not enough rich people to solve the problem. That's the issue. We can tax all of those over 400 that make over $400,000. But guess what, CR? They have to be taxed at over 100% of their extra income. So every year that $400,000 guy is going to have to be giving money back to the government out of his pocket. Well, that's not going to happen. And that's just to solve the problems we have now, not any additional problems we're going to create. And so I think anyone that believes that at a lower bracket, you're not going to get affected in the future. In fact, even with current administration, January 1st, 2026, taxes are going up. That we've got to be able to plan for that, because we just can't kick the can down the road forever. And unfortunately, that's what we've done to some level.
Sounds a lot like Ronald Reagan when he was in his acting days.
Yeah, definitely was. Yeah, I mean, you have that situation where he was doing 2 movies a year. If he did more, that's he was getting paid $100,000 a year. If you made over $200,000, so he could only do 2 movies, 94% to the federal government, and most of the rest of it went to the state of California. Now it's like 3.2 million in today's dollars, so it was substantially more money. But still, when you look at it, there's really not a lot of incentive. What I found is if you're not getting anything back out of your work, there's not a lot of incentive to keep doing it, and that's obviously the biggest fear. You get taxes too high. People are going to stop innovating. They're going to stop creating jobs because they're just giving it all away.
Exactly. Well, Dave, I'm so glad because we have Karen has joined us, and I love getting Karen on here because Karen's one of our longtime viewers. She's been here the most, and she asked this question. Dave, can you collect a deceased ex-spouse's Social Security at 60 years old? Also, what Social Security benefits does an ex-spouse lose when divorced? Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, welcome back. Good to see you here on the show again. So in regards to the 60, yes, you can, as long as they would have been age 62 or older at that time. So if you're a younger spouse and they're older and have reached that 62 age, you would be able to claim at age 60. Now, if they're not, if you were the older spouse and they died younger, you're going to have to wait until they would have reached that age, but you would be able to claim. Now, be aware at age 60, you're only going to get about 71.5% of the total benefit you'd be entitled to if you waited until you were full retirement or for what's really full benefit age, which is a little younger in your full retirement age. But yes, you can do that. Now, what Social Security benefits does an expat lose when divorced? Really nothing, as long as they were married for 10 years. Now, this is the issue. If you were married and you'd only been married for 1 year, which is the requirement that you would typically have to get benefits while you're alive, and 9 months if the person's passed away, for a divorced spouse, you had to have been married for 10 years. So if you were only married for 5, then you would lose any benefits you were entitled to that you would have been able to get had you still been married to that individual. But if you've met that 10-year requirement, all the benefits that you would have been entitled to before are yours, excluding, I will make one exception. It's that huge check that the government's going to give you for your funeral. And that huge check is $255. That's going to go to the current spouse. But again, how anybody can bury anyone for $255 in this day makes absolutely no sense to me. But I guess you can buy some flowers and a couple of programs and find some money somewhere else to be able to put someone in a casket and bury him.
Yeah, exactly. And Dave, I missed this one from Karen earlier as well. And she asked one more question. This is on reverse mortgage. And she said, what are the appropriate interest or the approximate interest rate charged on reverse mortgage?
Yeah, Karen, very good question. And this is something that people need to understand when they're talking about reverse mortgages. You've got two options. Number one is a fixed rate mortgage, which most people don't choose because you can only take a much smaller amount out if you do that. That's going to run somewhere between, right around 4% right now. So they are going to follow the market quite well with what's going on in the mortgage industry. Last I saw was just over 4%. For a variable rate, it's going to be down in the 3s. So you may be able to find one down in the 2s right now with as low as everything is, but the guess is going to be in the 3s. The biggest issue with the adjustable, you get more money, but you do need to understand that it can increase 5% during your time of having that loan, and you would be stuck paying that. So if you get in at 3.25 right now, it could go up to 8.25 during the process, and that interest is going to get charged and add into the balance of that loan. So, but yeah, not that far off. They use the treasury bond for the guideline and then add some points to it. And that's how they determine what current interest rates are on those. Now, sorry, not to go on too long of a discussion, but if you do get a private loan, now this is what I'm talking about is the home equity conversion mortgage, which is the government based. If you do get into a private loan, they can do whatever they want. So yeah, I would be, if you're getting into a private one, I'd be very careful because those interest rates could easily be 5, 6, 7, 8%. I mean, they can do whatever they want to.
And Karen, thank you so much for submitting both those questions. And thanks for being here. We love to see you jump on live. And for all those live, please go ahead and submit your questions about retirement. And if you're watching this on replay, please go to our website, theprosperityguy.com, and submit your questions there. And we'll be happy to answer them here or on another webinar or on our podcast. So Dave and I release a podcast. He does most of the work on Friday. I just go to the question and answer part at the end, and we just have a good conversation. And I ask him 3 tough questions, and some of them are not always great. And we go from there. So Dave, thanks for jumping on and taking those additional questions.
You bet.
All right. So my next one I have comes from Kevin. He says, for the purposes of the windfall elimination provision, what type of pensions plan does the provision apply to?
Let's make sure everyone understands what we're talking about. And this is from Social Security as well. So we had the government pension offset. That's when, let's say I have my own pension, but I'm trying to claim on my wife's Social Security, that if my pension is a government pension plan that it did not pay in Social Security, I'm going to get my benefits reduced. And that amounts 2/3 of your pension amount. That's how much your Social Security is going to get reduced. So if I had $750 of Social Security I was entitled to, but I had a $2,000 pension, or let's say a $3,000 pension to make the math easy, 2/3 of that's $2,000. Well, Social Security is only $750. So I'm getting that completely eliminated. Windfall elimination provision is when you have a government pension yourself and you're trying to claim Social Security benefits. And they're going to reduce your benefits by a maximum of $480 per month depending upon your individual facts and circumstances with that plan. Now, you can increase that amount by having substantial annual earnings, meaning if you had a government job and then did something part-time. I saw it when I lived in Las Vegas. You had all the firefighters that were working for the county and they weren't paying into Social Security, but they all had part-time jobs because they only went in, 10, 12 days a month. So they had a lot of free time. So they had other jobs where they were paying substantial amounts in. They would then be able to get their full Social Security if they exceed 30 years of substantial earnings. But yeah, that's something you do need to be concerned at. When we look at the type of pensions here, it's only government pensions or state, local, or federal where they've not paid into the Social Security program. If you've got one from some large corporation or a private corporation where you've been able to get a pension, not going to apply at all to those benefits.
And Dave, since we're talking a little bit about Social Security, tell me the biggest mistake people are making with Social Security right now.
Yeah, the biggest mistake that's being made is people are claiming it too early. Now, I get why they're doing it. I understand. Most of them, it's because they want the income. Part of it, they're just frustrated. They have paid into a program now for 40 years, and I'm going to get every penny out of that system. Well, the problem is the math doesn't work if you start taking money too early to get the maximum amount out of the program. In fact, I was just on a webinar just a few minutes ago before we jumped into here, and they were saying that there's over almost $4 trillion that's left on the table because people are not claiming at the right time. So it is a big issue. 95% plus claim at the wrong time to get the maximum benefits. And again, I realize for some people, they have to do it. Maybe you can't work anymore. Maybe physically you just can't work. Maybe you just cannot meet your bills and you're at a point that you've got to have those benefits. But for those on here that can wait, if you can find ways to do it, really good benefits to those who are willing to wait even up to age 70 to get those benefits.
And if you want to learn more about Social Security, you can always go to Dave has a webinar on Social Security. In fact, he has two of them that we have on CPA Academy. So again, you can go to theprosperityguy.com and you can see the events tab and all the events, including the 2 Social Security classes. And Dave, you also have a whole, I think, 2 episodes on the podcast about Social Security as well. So you've got tons of information out there, and you also do Social Security planning. Is that right?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So we really try to make sure you understand that there's like 2,700 different rules when you're talking about Social Security, and the software that we use to help do our planning and our analyzing. Many times it's running tens of thousands of different claiming situations. So it is a very complex program. We want to make sure people understand, and it's a very important part of your retirement. I think people often overlook because it's a government program and it's just there that when you get to retirement age, you can claim, that they really don't think about the math of what they're doing. And so they often do claim early rather than looking at what the true benefit could be to them if they wait. And the problem is too, CR, the Social Security Administration is not going to guide you in making the right decision. You're not going to go in and say, I want to claim at 62. And they're like, whoa, you're going to get half the money if you'd wait till age 70. You've got plenty of other income. Why in the world would you want to do that? They're not going to do any of that. So you need a third party, or you need to be able to educate yourself enough to a level where you can ask the right questions, because they're not going to provide that information. And they're not going to reach out to you either if you didn't, if you're eligible for benefits. That's another thing, is the government's not there to say, hey, here's a mailer coming out. Hey, you're entitled to tens of thousands of dollars of benefits. Please reach out to us. We'll make sure you get those. That's not going to happen either.
What? So you're telling me they're like the IRS? They're not very proactive?
Yeah, if you owe money, they're going to reach out to you immediately. But if you've got a refund, you're never going to hear from them.
Yeah.
And it is the way the system works. And so you've got to be proactive. And we talk about divorce. Karen brought up the question about divorced spouses. Well, they're not going to tell you that you're entitled to benefits as a divorced spouse. You've got to have the Social Security number for your ex-spouse. You've got to be able to know, prove how long you've been married. You've got to prove how long you've been divorced. You've got to have all that information, and then go yourself to say, hey, I was on a webinar with Dave, or I was on a Facebook Live event, or whatever it may be, and I understand that I'm entitled to benefits. Can you please tell me what benefits I'm entitled to? You're going to have to be proactive to be able to get that, or you're just going to miss out on them.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, Fred jumps on live and he asked this question. He said, my wife has a small amount, $16,000, in Ohio Teachers Requirement Fund for the couple of years when she taught middle school. I've heard this will affect the amount she will get from Social Security. How does this impact it?
Yeah. So when we talk about if it's just $16,000 as a lump sum amount, it's really not going to affect much. It can have some minor benefits, but it sounds like she will have hit the substantial earnings, assuming that she worked for most of the rest of her life. If she had 25, well, it's 30 years where she's made in 2020, it's $25,000 a year or more. So if she worked elsewhere for most of her career and made, what inflation adjusted in today's dollars would be equivalent $25,000, it's not going to affect her at all. She's going to get the same bend points. Now, if she didn't, if this was the only earnings, she may have some small reduction, but with the dollars you're talking about here and the amount that would come out of it, I don't see really any major reduction on the benefits she'll be entitled to.
Yeah, Fred, I hope that answers your questions. Thank you so much for submitting that. Dave, we see a lot of questions that come in about Social Security. I mean, again, we've been talking about it, and you've talked about some of the mistakes people are making. As we end the show, because we've came to our 30 minutes here, I want to get your parting words. If anyone else is out there asking in their head thinking, okay, Social Security, what's my next step, or what do I need to do to make sure I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it as I talk about government programs in general, Social Security, Medicare, and reverse mortgage. You don't consider it a government program, but it is because the loans are backed by the government. The biggest thing you've got to do is educate yourself about these programs so you understand at least the basics. I don't expect you to be a nerd like me that's going to go in and study every detail of these programs and then go spend hours on webinars trying to educate people. Now, if you want to, please come join us. We'd love to be able to work with people who want to educate. But I do believe you've got to educate yourself on the basics enough so that you can make the right decisions, and really more so you can ask the right questions. Getting where we want to in life is oftentimes about being able to ask the right questions. I talk about it that when I get into businesses, it's not what I know that scares me, it's what I don't know. And if I don't know to ask questions in regards to risks that I may have, how am I ever going to address those risks? So that's why we do what we do. That's why I'm so passionate about the webinars, the podcasts, the Facebook Live events, writing books now. We're trying to get our website where you can get immediate access to this information, because we want you to gain the education, because then you can ask the right questions, which then will get you the answers you need to make the right decisions.
Yeah. Dave, thank you so much for being here, for taking time out of your busy week. I know you just went through a couple really tough weeks, and I also know you got to spend a little time away with family. So I appreciate you taking time to be here with all of us and to talk about retirement and to go through and answer questions. It's been super helpful for me, and I'm hoping for all those who've been watching live and on the replay.
Yeah, you're welcome, CR. Happy to do it. I always look forward to this every week because I love getting people on here, being able to help them solve issues that they've had. Many people have had these questions for a long time, or maybe they're a new question and they didn't realize that there was something out there that could help them. So being able to inspire people to realize that there are solutions to their retirement situation, that their lives can be better than maybe what they thought they were going to be. If I can do that and help a handful or even hundreds or thousands of people get to a life and a retirement that looks different than they expected, I feel that I've done my job, and hopefully have been able to be a value to society and to those people we're trying to help here.
And if we missed your questions, or if you have additional questions, please submit it at theprosperityguy.com and go to the contact us. You can submit your question there, and we'll answer it either here on a webinar or on one of the podcasts at the end. So we have a quick, easy question and answer session with Dave. I think it's easy. I just asked the question. But we do that. And then again, we have all the webinars. So you can go to theprosperityguy.com, go to the events tab. You can check that out. You can go to the podcast tab. There's so many great things out there, Dave. And I'm so glad that you spend time to go out and educate, because I think that's the best thing about what we're doing right now, is getting the right information into the right hands. I can't tell you how many conversations we've had where people are out there and you're at an event or on a webinar or somewhere where people are just giving bad information. And I think it's important that we stay on the right path and we stay current to what's important to everyone's retirement today.
It's very interesting for me. I've got family that's got a number of issues surrounding the retirement. Many of you know that if you listen to anything I've got kidney transplant. Our family's got a history of kidney failure. So we deal with Medicare and those type of programs earlier than most. We've got Social Security issues that come in. So my family is laughing at me, they're like, how do you know so much about this stuff? I don't know anything about this stuff. Well, because I've spent time trying to understand, I can help people make those right decisions and get through these trying times.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. And Karen also says, thanks to both of you. I love your webinars and live sessions. Have an awesome day. So Dave, I just want to echo what she said. Thank you so much for the time spent on these webinars and the live sessions. And I do hope your day is awesome, and I hope it gets better.
Yeah, thank you. And Karen, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone that supports us and allows us to continue to try to educate on these topics.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys all again. So remember, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time, we'll be right here. Also, you can find us on YouTube, and we have a variety of other ones coming. We're just waiting to get approval because this is always a challenge to move forward. But we hope to see you on some of those shows, and if not, we'll see you on the webinars, or every Friday we have the podcast. And again, thanks for being here for all of you, and we'll see you next time.